So out of the three roles which you have, as a consultant, as a CFO, as an entrepreneur, which one is very close to your heart?
As we're all humans, right? And we all make mistakes. And we have made a lot of mistakes. I have personally made a lot of mistakes in life.
I mean, it is such an irony that you learn more when you're an entrepreneur because you play so many roles out there and you're expected to know literally all the roles which you have never played before.
Yeah, I think I would probably split the challenges into two parts, right? One is about the personal challenges and second is about what we face as an organization.
The driving force is missing, whatever you achieve, and you have the best of, branding, marketing, salespeople. But if the core is missing, if the passion is missing within an organization, it's difficult to really take it far. That is completely right. Hello everyone. So I'm back again for all those good conversations which are leading to so many new insights, how the corporate world works, how the higher designations work, what skills are required for meeting certain challenges, and what if a person has actually tried everything in his life. So let's meet Mr. Venkat. So welcome, Mr. Venkat. So I think Venkat Raman and Venkat, so we'll use Venkat in our, addressing that would be easier for me.
Thank you, Sachin. It's a pleasure to be here and thank you for having me on your podcast.
Thank you. So if I may give a small, brief intro about Mr. Venkat. He's been into the industry for last 30 plus years. He's been a chartered accountant. He has worked with Big Fours. So he's been into the consultancy world. Then he was with the corporate world where he worked as a CFO for 6 long years. And then he is now into entrepreneurship where he's been there for last more than 15 years. Is that correct?
That's right.
Wow. So that's a vast of experience and that's a huge dip from one place to another place, and it needs a lot of mindset change. How, in a person and what all mindset changes you have really experienced. Would like to listen that first.
Sure. I'm very happy to kind of walk you through the experience. Just on a lighter note, it's pretty scary when somebody says that you've got 30 years of experience. This makes me feel very old. I started my career with Block & Lewis, which is part of Coopers & Lybrand, now known as PricewaterhouseCoopers. I was very fortunate to start my life in audit. And this were the good old days in the Big Four when there wasn't micro-specialization, right? So you could kind of shift between different partners who do different things in the firm. So I was very fortunate to work with some extraordinary leaders who gave a lot of freedom and flexibility on the job. I still feel that was probably the best place that I've worked at so far. And possibly most of the good things that I learned in life have really kind of come from my mentors and bosses at PwC. A good stint of about 8 years where I had a chance to work across a number of industries. But primarily I was focused on manufacturing companies and I had a chance to work with some blue chip names like Unilever, Glaxo, etc. At a certain point in my career at PwC, I felt the need to kind of move on to the industry and see how things are practically done on the operation side of things. So I had an opportunity to move to Aon, which is one of the world's largest insurance brokers. They were looking for someone who could assist them in negotiating a local JV, in setting up operations in India. So I joined them as a CFO. I worked there for about 5-6 years actually, and the good part is that probably accounting and finance was maybe about 25% of the role. The balance was really more on partnering with the CEO and with the chairman to help them set up the business in India and also to scale it up. So it was a very successful operation that we ran. Post which the entrepreneurial bug bit me and I set up a company, a firm called as My CFO, currently rechristened or rebranded as Practice. So we are India's largest outsourced CFO services company and India's largest independently owned performance improvement shop. So again, the reason why we set this up is because we think that there's a lot of consulting and advisory in the Indian market today. But when managements, boards, leaderships, investors, when they need actual outcomes on the ground, we find that there are some serious limitations in translating intent and plans into actual execution. So my CFO, or what is practiced today, was born as a solution to those problems, where we work largely with family-run businesses, with private equity or venture capital funded businesses to help them scale, primarily by helping them improve their EBITDA and their cash flows. Yeah, so that's in a nutshell a quick summary of my journey over the last 30 years.
Wow, wonderful. So my question was, how much shift in the mind was required to really come to a different role like that?
Yeah, I think so the shift from audit or consulting to industry to me was an eye-opener. A lot of learnings, because when I always thought I was a very pragmatic and a practical auditor. I never been a very bureaucratic. Typically they say that an auditor is a watchdog, not a bloodhound, etc. So I always believed that I've taken a very friendly view with the clients. We're obviously not compromising on the audit principles. But the one thing I realized when I moved to industry is that the same thing. Let's say if it's revenue. The auditor may kind of look at it purely from a control standpoint to ensure the correctness, accuracy, completeness, etc. But as a CFO, you're kind of really looking to, see how you can scale that revenue up. How do you kind of work maximize, without compromising on the quality of earnings. You want to make sure that there's sustainable growth. You want to make sure that the business development cost as a percentage of revenue acquisition is still within reasonable limits. You kind of start to look at short-term versus long-term trade-offs. You look at how the organization should be built so that it can deliver to certain levels of profits and revenues. So the same thing can be viewed so differently, and in all probability, the auditor is a chartered accountant, the CFO is a chartered accountant, but the way in which you view the same number on the P&L is completely different. So that was a bit of a mindset change when I had to move from consulting to industry. The move from industry to entrepreneurship was, I think, an even more steeper learning curve. Till the time I was in the industry and also with PwC, I had a very, very, very good opinion about what I brought to the table and the value that I added. But the moment I kind of set up on my own, I began to realize that the value that somebody gave me was probably 80 or 90% because of the brand that was actually supporting me, right? So when you say you're from PwC, you're from Aon, the respect, the credibility is automatically built in, right? When as an entrepreneur, you got to kind of pretty much start everything from scratch, right? So that was a reality check. I was very fortunate to kind of fly business class, etc. As CFO, you set up your own firm, you could kind of start flying economy. I had a team of people to help me book tickets, etc. You had to start up on your own, pretty much you did that yourself. So I think, and practice has been a phenomenal journey. I started 250 square foot apartment, one-room apartment that my dad gave as a seed capital. Today we are about 250 odd people, employing about 150 chartered accountants. I've done everything from being the pochawala and the guy serving the tea, right up to the guy who's kind of helping in kind of drafting the strategy and the growth of the firm. But I think being an entrepreneur, you need to have that bandwidth, the mental and physical bandwidth to be able to kind of scale up or scale down, depending on what the situation requires.
Wonderful. So, it is such an irony that you learn more when you're an entrepreneur, because you play so many roles out there and you're expected to know literally all the roles which you have never played before.
Yeah, I think a good example, so totally agree with that comment, like one of the, and I'm sure that this is something that you also, I'm sure you would have seen in your own career, right? Such and you have been a very successful CFO yourself. And, in your own current role, I'm sure there's a lot of branding, a lot of marketing, a lot of sales involved, right? In my role as a consultant and a CFO, I never had to sell anything. There was always somebody who was typically waiting outside your door to kind of offer you some services or some products to sell. But here, when you become your own company's brand ambassador, you are on the different side of the equation. And these are things that you don't learn in school, right? Especially I think people who come from an accounting background, I think sales or marketing is possibly the last thing that you're exposed to, right? And you don't really expect that, you're going to be needing this skill set ever in life. But when you're again running your own ship, right, there is something called a job description, right? I mean, anything that needs to get done in the organization will still land up at your desk, and whether you are formally trained for it or not, I think you've got to find it somewhere. And the beauty is that human beings are such resilient creatures, right? I think we find those skill sets within us, right, to be able to deal with the situation, right? I have enormous respect for all women, right, especially moms, because it's not as if somebody has trained a girl to be a mom, right? And suddenly she has a baby, and then you see a completely different avatar, right? Extremely responsible, and suddenly she discovers multitasking skills and the ability to take care, which probably even she didn't know that it existed within her, right? So I think, to me, the journey to becoming an entrepreneur is like almost to become like the mom of the company.
Oh, that's a very, very good connotation. That's something where you become a mother and everything is there. That you do for your baby, which is an organization you have come up with.
Yeah, and the baby will cry. The baby will cry at that time when you are most.
And keep crying.
and you have to kind of make the effort to make sure that it is taken care of.
Correct. Until the best of your efforts, you have actually performed all the roles. The baby keep crying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that is so true, and I so much resonate with this because being at the roles of a CFO, we realize that everything is so easy to perform. It is only the subject knowledge which is important in those roles and people handling skills. While when you become an entrepreneur, you need to apply your financial skills, you need to apply your subject knowledge apart from all the other skills which you are expected to have. And yeah, I think the biggest compromise or biggest mindset change is from the authority and the from scratch, as you rightly said. And that is where, nobody's there to call you ma'am. You are required to do everything that's needed. That is something which needs a lot of mindset.
Yeah. I think, while I totally agree with what you're saying, sir, I also, I think, want to make the point that, see, as an entrepreneur, you also realize, especially this is true for people like you and me, is that even when you're providing the same advice, you cannot do it the same way with every. Right, so we deal with a lot of family-managed businesses. Sometimes you're dealing with a 100 crore company. Someday you're dealing with a 2,000 crore company, right? It can be a solo entrepreneur. It can be a family-managed business, right? So the way you end up communicating the solution or giving your advice can be very different, right? And obviously, when you're talking to the CFO of, let's say, an Indian conglomerate or an MNC, the way you're trying to explain it to him will be different. When you're talking to a private equity fund, is different, right? So, and on the surface, it looks like, it's the same solution. But the words you use and, the means that you use to kind of communicate it, will be radically different, for each of these customer groups. Right? So how to tailor make the message, in a way that the other party can understand, particularly in the services context, I think again, it's a super important role that founders and entrepreneurs end up playing.
Do you think you ever learned sales?
No, actually, no. I think it's really more by observation. So, obviously in your life, you come across multiple people and some of them kind of leave behind a very good impression, right? So even in the firm, I used to accompany partners for client pitches. And then you have an opportunity of seeing in a very live environment on the job, how different partners end up, pitching the same project to different types of clients, right? So the same thing at Aon as well. I mean, I used to accompany some of our sales people where they used to kind of go out and pitch to clients, right? So, you end up picking up some of the skills through observation. And of course, the biggest university is the University of Life, right? So it's like a laboratory. I think the best part about being an entrepreneur is that you get to experiment in your own laboratory. You mix a few chemicals and sometimes it gives you a wonderful reaction. Sometimes you mix the same chemicals and it can just blow up on your face and leave a very bad odor, right? So, you do 100 meetings, 200 meetings, and then a pattern begins to emerge to say that, look, these are things that you're doing well. and probably these are the things that possibly you should not be doing, right? And then I think most hardworking people with common sense, you don't need to be intelligent, you don't need to be super smart, you don't need to be a genius. Most of us learn from our mistakes, right? And we say, okay, now how do I kind of be better for the next meeting? So, to me, I never learned sales formally. And I'm not claiming to be a great salesman or anything of that kind, but I think what will literally be a learn by observation or by trying it on the job.
So, out of the 3 roles which you have, as a consultant, as a CFO, as an entrepreneur, which one is very close to your heart?
See, to be honest, I think there are parts of each of these that are very close, right? And I'll just give you 1 or 2 examples from each, right? So when I was leaving the firm, Thomas Matthew, who was the partner that I was working with the most at PwC, he had told me that, look, when he showed me his chair and said that, look, always treat this chair not as an owner, but as a trustee, right? So you are in this chair only as long as somebody who's not better than you kind of comes to claim it, right? And to me, that was great because when I was talking to somebody with close to 40 years of experience, he was a managing partner of the firm, and coming from him, it taught me a very important lesson that you've got to separate the ownership role and the trusteeship role, right? And that's a lesson that I've never forgotten. Right. Similarly, Sharmila Karve, again, somebody that I respect a lot, and I again reported to her work for the longest time at PwC. I mean, she used to put in 16, 18 hours a day. Right? And one thing which I learned from her is I was a first year article. I had an opportunity to do stock valuation. Right. I mean, I was never told that, hey, look, you got 0 experience, you cannot take up the area. The principle was, if you had the ability to work hard, if you're willing to learn, then your academic qualification and number of years of experience never mattered, right? So these are principles that I was able to take from that experience in PwC and actually bring it to what we are trying to do at practice, right? I mean, we don't have artificial restrictions to say that, oh, you're going to spend 3 years in one role before you can be considered for a promotion, right? Somebody is good, he has delivered the results, let's put him on a fast track, right? So those are aspects that are very, very close to my heart. If I look at my CFO role, I was running a JV. And I had a wonderful opportunity, Sachi, to work with an Indian entrepreneur who was, I would say, a small to mid-sized entrepreneur, extremely passionate, very, very smart, right? And out-and-out salesman, a people's person. And he had a JV with Aeon, which was like a Fortune 500 company, right? So how does a local Indian entrepreneur who has kind of run business only in the family managed way, and how do you kind of harness its energy by using the systems and processes and the reporting mechanisms, risk management mechanisms that a really good quality MNC kind of brings to the board? That confluence was just amazing. It's like, for those of us who have been to Triveni Sangam at Allahabad, you can actually see Ganga and Jamuna, the 2 colors are distinct, So for me, I was right in the junction of that Triveni Sangam where I could see the Indian entrepreneurial style and the MNC style, and when an issue cropped up at a board meeting, I knew exactly how the 2 sides are going to think, right? So the wonderful part about my job is I had an opportunity of not only seeing it firsthand, but also the ability to kind of put it together, right? So I was almost the kind of guy who was able to say, look, can we do it this way? Which kind of
put it together, bridge the gap. There's so many things that we, subconsciously do because we know,
exactly.
Where we stand. True.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that is one thing which I feel I cherish out of my CFO experience. In the entrepreneurship experience, I think it's about the ability to create a platform, right? I mean, today the excitement at my end is really about, look, can you create a company full of entrepreneurs, right? People who might need a salary for whatever reason, but who have got the ambition and the drive to create value, within the larger ecosystem. So can we create an army of entrepreneurs, maybe 15, 20, 30 entrepreneurs who can kind of go out and run their mini ships, if you like, within the larger practice. Mm-hmm. And how large can you make that ship, right? So if you look at the opportunity in the consulting world, right? If you take out the Big Four and you take out, let's say, the McKinsey, Bain, BCG, how many global, and I'm also kind of taking out the IT consulting space, right? I'm talking about the management consulting space. How many homegrown Indian consulting firms are there which are known on the global stage, right? There's hardly anybody. So to me, that's a massive white space, right? So what happened with IT services, with Infosys, Wipro, etc., they were Indian-born companies that became very global, right? So can we now create a management consulting firm which is Indian in its roots, in its culture, in its ethos, but extremely global in terms of the quality and the perspective and the experience that it brings to the table. So when we first set up our offices in Dubai and then subsequently in New York, the vision with which we set it up is to say that, look, we want to be India's first homegrown consulting firm, that management consulting firm that truly is kind of global in perspective.
Wow, wonderful. And I think that vision per se itself drives you so much that you really do not care to make any categories, any bifurcations as to what we do, what we do not do. We have to reach there. I think that applies to everybody who is passionate about reaching somewhere. Don't you think so?
Yeah, absolutely. See, we have an opportunity of working with a lot of founder-run companies, actually, right? And, when we sit down and do a SWOT analysis, generally entrepreneurs, we sit down, we do a one-on-one. I wouldn't call it coaching, you're not in the coaching space, but you're doing a one-to-one conversation with them. I ask them to normally draw up a SWOT of their company. Almost no one, and this is probably got to do with the humility of some of these founders also, almost no one adds their vision as the company's biggest strength, right? Because all these companies, when a company becomes 1,000 crore in turnover, people say, oh wow, 1,000 crore ka turnover ban gaya. Everybody forgets that at one time, this company would have been 1 crore, right? So what has really brought them from 1 to 1,000, I think, is really the entrepreneur's vision. It's the passion. It's the fuel in the tank, right, for the entrepreneur. Everything else finds a way to kind of help the entrepreneur to get to that goal. So to me, whether it's capital, it's people, it's the branding, I think all this will come. But if the core is not there, right, in terms of the vision, then, frankly,
absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree with you 100%. Because if, the driving force is missing, whatever you achieve, and you have the best of, branding, marketing, salespeople, but if the core is missing, if the passion is missing within an organization, it's difficult to really take it far. That is completely right. So one more thing which I already thought about it while you were mentioning your journey was, has there been any lows in your life which you could say, oh, that phase was very challenging for me?
No, several. See, I think, as we're all humans, right, and we all make mistakes. And we have made a lot of mistakes. I have personally made a lot of mistakes in life. There have been, incorrect decisions that have been made. And I'm not worried about the financial decisions, money comes, money goes. But then there are certain decisions that you make on the moral side, right, which are very hard to kind of, reverse or replace. Right? Equally, there have been client service situations, right? For whatever reasons, we haven't been able to deliver. I distinctly remember a company that was going in for an IPO. We were in the middle of an ERP implementation, and the project was about 4 months delayed, right? And I had come back to the board meeting with a plan on how to revive it, right? But I was just completely shredded in that board meeting, right? And it's never a nice thing. You had 9 or 10 directors, 3 or 4 independent directors, representatives of a couple of PE funds. And their whole point was, look, what is the credibility of this plan? Because these plans have been given in the past and they have failed, right? So how do we even start to believe that this plan is achievable? Right? This happened probably about very, very early days at practice, probably about 15 years back, 14 years back. But to me, it taught me I felt so small that day, because it's not, as professionals, we all pride ourselves on doing a good job. And, we all live and die for positive client feedback, right? Sometimes client explicitly, sometimes they don't. But the last thing we want to hear is a criticism, right? And that too on the quality of the work. So it was such a humbling experience, right? So obviously that night I didn't sleep. But, the only positive thing, and, when I spoke to my mom about it, right, we shared and said that, look, you're feeling down for whatever reason. And she said, look, the only thing you can do from now on is to resolve that you will never get yourself or put the firm into this kind of a situation again. I mean, because what has happened has happened. I cannot retrieve the situation. And the good part is that it's the same client that in 4 years' time, they actually wrote us a letter of appreciation on a completely different project. Right? So the beautiful thing is that I think the world is very forgiving. Clients are very forgiving. Right? People may express their opinion, given whatever circumstances that are. I think it's important for us to kind of keep our cool, acknowledge our mistakes, not claim to be perfect, and say, look, I go from now. right? Be transparent. I think people always remember your honesty, your integrity, your transparency. People do come back, right? Because they are not perfect themselves, right? Because they realize,
yes,
they also realize that maybe they overreacted in that situation. They shouldn't have done it. But the fact that you chose not to react similarly, or you chose not to abandon the project, you said, okay, it's okay for me to take a loss, but I'll deploy more people and increase the project. Even if they don't tell you anything good at that day, I think people go back, they think about it coolly, do something good. I think life makes sure that it comes back a full circle and it gives you back in spades. So what you lose out, you might lose one now, but life gives you back 5x, 10x as time.
Very, very, very well articulated, Venkat. Because I strongly believe that yes, the first step to correcting anything is to accept that you've made a mistake. Now, once we accept to make that yes, I goofed up, and that is where you start thinking, okay, how do I correct it now? How do I make it good? And is it really possible to make it good, or at least I try to make it closer to good, if not the same? That per se is, and those determinations, they come out when you more and more give yourself that, okay, what happened if we goofed up? Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
I completely agree on this one also. So I think there's a lot of resonation where whatever you are saying, I have been into. So I was with EY, I was as a CFO, and now I'm an entrepreneur. So I think now, after hearing you out, I am, really absorbing it that, this is something which I have not been able to really understand the way you have put it across, and I'm now able to understand that yes, I mean, there are so many things that we learn, going forward in journeys.
Yeah.
What has been your highest point? What has been which you treated as an achievement till date? Which has been your biggest high?
Yeah. I think what gives me a real high is when I see some of our alumni doing very well. So we hosted an formal alumni party. Obviously, we kind of meet up with people informally, even after people leave us and then move on for other pursuits in life. We had a formal one about 18 months back, and it was wonderful to see. We probably had about 150 people in the room. And it's so wonderful, so many of these people have kind of gone on to become entrepreneurs. Some of them have become CFO, some have gone into sales and marketing. But when they come, we had made time for 5 people to come and share their experiences. We probably had about 20-25 people ending up sharing their experiences.
Oh, wow.
And, you feel so good when, they say and they recognize and they appreciate the role that practice played in shaping their careers, right? And this got nothing to do with whether they learned how to make a cash flow statement or they had an opportunity to go overseas, etc. It's just about the value systems and the cultural aspects that they were able to take away from us. I think that's what kind of gives me the goosebumps. I feel wow, it's been worth it, right? I mean, all the struggles and the uncertainties that you end up embracing as an entrepreneur. You feel okay, it's worth it. Yeah, because for me, when I started practice, the idea was to the kind of experience that I got at PwC. I wanted a place where I can recreate it, right? And I'm not saying that we are there yet. PwC is a 150-year-old firm. We are only about 15-16 years, so still long way to go. But I think the foundations are strong. Right? So I think it's the high point is that. You kind of feel that yes, probably you're on the right track.
Yeah, very true. I think the only difference, what I find is you are still, pouring on to the subject because you're still around finance, you are still around numbers, you're still around some debit and credit. While I have moved actually far ahead, started working on people more than numbers, and that has been like, the biggest shift in my life, which I feel. That, ultimately being on the designations also, we start to cater to handling people more than subject line.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's where we realize that, ultimately we are only handling clients, we are handling employees, we are handling subordinates, peers. So we are typically handling people. Subject knowledge becomes a very smaller part because then you come to know what is wrong and where you need to give your inputs.
Yeah, I'll probably add on to what you're saying. Sakshi, I think the point you're trying to make, again, totally agree with this, is that frankly, finance is an outcome. Right? The numbers are an outcome. And you cannot manufacture a P&L or a cash flow. You have to work on the levers of the business. You have to work with the people. You work with the system. You work with the business model, with the markets, and then it kind of translates right into numbers. So I think anybody who's trying to chase the numbers per se, I think is probably likely to meet with lesser success as compared to those who are trying to chase the levers that produce those numbers.
Correct.
The other thing that you mentioned about dealing with people, I think it's also about how one deals with oneself. And I think both in a leadership, whether you are in a CXO role or whether you are an entrepreneur, I think while dealing with the world outside is like super important. I think learning to kind of make peace with one's own self is also a very, very important trait. But I think there is no course in the world that I think, probably except for, maybe some religious institutions or philosophical institutions, maybe Chennai Mission, Isa Foundation. I think those are the schools where where you begin to realize, okay, you learn about all curriculums and you got all your degrees, but who's going to teach you to deal with your own self, your own mind, your own peace, right? So I think both sides of the education, I think all of us need to know how to compete well.
Yeah, absolutely. I still remember a session which I took for our institute, Chartered Accountancy Institute, and they wanted mindfulness and resilience as the topics. I was so elated. I said, wow, I'm seeing for the first time, you are expecting anything that is coming from a chartered accountant to a chartered accountant client. And, it is like, why did you choose me only for that? So they're like, you have started to shift on a different forte, and who better than, giving us some insight on resilience and mindfulness. And I still remember that, yes, this is one profession where, mindfulness, peace, that comes, as a secondary thing. The first thing is to first see how the numbers are looking and just give the right numbers, get to it, I mean, every profession for that matter, every function has that. But I think, that peacemaking thing has to be one of the subjects which is very important in the finance profession. I've literally thought that every time while I was even studying that and to chartered accountants, they believe that, you have become a chartered accountant means you had great determination to become, and then you don't need any other motivation. Now that you can handle yourself, kind of.
Correct. Yeah, I agree.
So I also, spoke to the institute saying that, okay, you put me there only when, the results are out, and I'll give one session to all the people to at least motivate them to give the next attempt, because that is one place where people want some inspiration so that they can come back with their determination.
Yeah. Agreed, totally agree.
I think chartered accountants are taken for granted for the determination, and, unko kuch nahi hota. वो सिर्फ चीजें handle कर लेते हैं, that is what is very true. Yeah. So what has been now your goal in mind? What is that the next step? Now you've achieved, a position where you're proud of taking practice to this level. What next?
Yeah, I think we are, very much a work in progress. I think long way to go. I mean, 250 people is really nothing in the overall scheme of things, at least at a world scale. Right? So I think there's lots to be done to grow this organization globally. I think on the client side, what kind of really excites us is the entire ROI model that we have built. So we are probably the first firm anywhere in the world to come up with a proprietary ROI model, where we actually help clients measure what is the cash flow benefit that they have got by bringing us on board. Right? And the target is that every client who hires us should get at least a 5x return, measurable return on the investment, right? So if I take 100 in fees, they should get at least 500 in measurable outcomes back, right? So we've been measuring this for the last about 5 to 6 years, and so far we have delivered about 250 million US in value across probably about 300-400 clients that we have tracked. Okay, but I think can we kind of convert this into a few billions, right? So I think ultimately, when you are in the consulting world, the only thing that really matters is client satisfaction. And to me, we have kind of translated that client satisfaction as being equal to the improvement we are delivering in the enterprise valuation, right? Especially if it's a family-run or a founder-run business or a PE-invested business. if the enterprise valuation is X, I should be able to, this is smart people, right? So they can anyway take it to 3x, 5x. But if I can take it to 10x, 20x, by partnering with them, then that delta then becomes a valuation. So today, I think the vision is that in how many such companies can we create that value, and how many $1 billion of valuation improvement can we actually deliver to our clients over a period of time.
Wow. So I keep thinking that, the sea never gets tired of its waves. Every time it hits the shore, it comes back again, hits back, and still it is one of the strongest, in nature. So in the same way, I see that, you have actually taken this thought of consulting to a different level, where an Indian, entrepreneurship, how it can be taken to global level, and what more needs to be done. Do you think there are challenges which you think are difficult, and you really want to work around or navigate that particular challenge for going that big?
I'd probably split the challenges into two parts. One is about the personal challenge and the institutional challenge. The institutional challenge, I would say it's about how do we kind of find and attract the right talent. We have some very bright people joining us from the best organizations, right? But I think what the younger workforce wants, like our average age is about 31 years. Right? So these are typically, professionals who kind of come with about 5, 6 to 10 and 12 years of experience. What I wanted out of my life when I started my career is so different, right? As compared to what the younger professionals want when they're now kind of coming out of school, college, the institute, or wherever. So how do we as an organization continue to stay relevant, to these people? I think it's a very important issue. See, I'm less worried about the demand side of the equation, because there are always finance problems to be solved. Right? I mean, if there is a problem of plenty, you're going to help entrepreneurs figure out how to invest the money, how to acquire, etc. If there is a problem of less, then you've got to figure out how to raise funding, how to cut costs, rationalize, and so on. I think these are ebbs and flows, and there is enough, I think, market out there, especially for an implementation-focused firm like ours. So that's the demand side. Okay, I'm less worried about that. I think the supply side is where we've got to be very careful about the quality, right, and also about the cultural fitment of the people who are joining us, right? Because you can build a brick wall very quickly, but if that foundation layer is not, the first 3 or 4 slabs are not correct, I think the whole edifice can kind of come falling down, right? So if I take a forward 10-year, 20-year, 30-year view, right, and I look at somebody who is joining the firm today, right, I think the lens that we want to apply is to say, look, can I see this individual in, say, 20 years' time as a CEO of practice, right? Again, nothing to do with the capability of this individual, right? It's just about the mindset, the articulation, the personality, the value systems, right? The cultural ethos that this person brings. Do we see this individual as being a fitment for us over a longer period of time? And again, we're looking for intelligent people, but they don't need to be super geniuses. In fact, we don't want super geniuses, right? Because they're not the best in kind of working with others as a team. So once you apply some of these software filters, then the talent pool that is available to you, it kind of comes down quite a bit. Right? So today, I think our ability as a firm to scale has got less to do with our ability to get hold of new clients. It's got to do more with the ability to get the right kind of people, right? And once you get those people on board, then we as an employer have got to be continuously relevant to them, right? Because these CVs are constantly getting upgraded. There's always going to be a demand.
Yes.
But this individual should still feel that, look, if I give 1 more year or 2 more years of my life to practice, then the value addition that I'm going to get this thing on is probably even better as compared to what will happen if I move to the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Because these days, employees choose the employers more than the employers choose them.
Exactly. Absolutely. So I think it's very important for us as an organization to stay humble. And it's exactly to your point that, look, are we attractive enough, not just in terms of the package, etc., but the overall thing, right, about the experience of working with practice, is that adequately attractive and relevant to kind of get hold of the right talent in the market. So this is, I think, one, and this is a problem we face both in our US market as well as in India market. I think world over the problem is the same, that good quality people who are available to kind of work at an affordable price, I think it's a challenge. I mean, you look at even the Big Four, you look at some of the largest IT companies, attrition rates are at 30-35%, right? So how does one solve it? Okay, so this is on the institutional level. I think at a personal level, it's about unlearning, right? So one of the issues that anybody with say 15, 20, 25 years plus of experience has is that we all end up having a baggage, right? So if somebody wakes you up or wakes me up in the middle of the night and throws a problem, we'll immediately give a solution basis the past experience, right? So there is an instinct that gets built to say, "Ye kar do, ye aapka solve ho jayega," right? But how does one keep an open mind to newer facts, newer trends, newer technologies, newer ways of thinking, and continuously apply it to the way in which we are problem solving? Okay, is I think something which I have to remind myself every day that look, what I know in the past may not necessarily be relevant, and that happens. But sometimes you go for client meetings. We are trying to kind of solve something, and I'm trying to do something, and some of my younger colleagues will come and say, "Sir, why are you doing this, Venkat? I mean, this is you leave it to me, I'll solve it." And when they come back with the solution, it's a lot more simpler, a lot more elegant, more efficient than the way I would have solved it, right? So thinking that look, I'm this guy who can solve all problems for everybody. While it's a very natural thought, I have to make an effort to curb myself to saying that look, maybe I'm not the best guy to solve this problem, right? So that process of unlearning, relearning is, I think, at a personal level, a challenge that I need to kind of wake up every day and find a way of solving it.
Such a beautiful thing. Having learned in all the three spheres where you've been an entrepreneur as a CFO and as well in consulting, even now, even today, being open to learning, being open-minded, and being very, very receptive in terms of how the young generation is bringing in new values, new ways to present, new opinions, and being there to even represent or witness that itself is such a pleasant thing to have a mindset like that. I mean, I truly appreciate that after this experience, if a person has thought this way, that is how we as human beings keep growing. And
I think we can say a lot of nice and flowering things about it. I've got a very practical view on this. So, merely about simple as I think, right? I mean, if I don't do this, I'll become irrelevant. Okay, so that's the way I look at it, right? Because the thing is, today, when we and I started our careers, there was a lot of respect for age, seniority, experience, right? Today's world is a completely meritocratic world, right? So if there is a guy with a 5-year experience and a 30-year experience, right, and if he is giving a solution that is better than mine, then today the world will go to him, and that's fair. That's completely fair, right? So I don't think we can bring our baggage, and of course there are huge strengths that people like us bring to the table. But I think it's also very important for us to stay grounded, right? And I mean, if we don't change with the times, then I think the world is going to just bypass.
And that is for our peace, then more than anything else. Again, knowing that where we stand and what more is there to learn, being relevant to the new era and being present at the moment is what all about peace and resilience is.
Yeah.
It's such a wonderful thing to talk to you. It's such it was a very, very insightful communication and conversation with you, Venkat. I think I have enjoyed this thoroughly, not just because we have shared the fraternity of our profession, but also because somewhere I could resonate with so many things and valuable things which you have thought. Because coming into entrepreneurship and thinking about it might be easy, but here the challenges for the retention of good team and delivery of the things on time, so many other challenges which are there, which probably we had not learned the way it was there while we were heading the organizations as CFOs, or even in consulting, those days while I was with EY also, consulting was there, but it was a small piece of there. Still, the audit and other parts were bigger. They were considered to be more heavier. Very nice talking to you, Venkat. Any last sentences that you would like to close with? Anything that we could take away?
No, not really. I think because it's a new year, possibly some thoughts on a new year resolution, right? So this year, and this is just personally something that I'm trying to do. Not to sound prescriptive. is rather than make a very large number of resolutions, I'm kind of looking to track how long I stick with it, right? So instead of having 10, maybe 5 resolutions, is it okay to have 2 resolutions? But then instead of spreading your energies over trying to achieve 5 things, is it better to just focus on 2, but make sure it kind of carries right up to the end of the year, right? So, is discipline and consistency and putting something in a routine, should that be taking precedence over trying to chase multiple goals, and then maybe in 3 months or 2 months, the energy is kind of exhausted? Is a thought that I've tried to kind of bring into my New Year planning process. So maybe that would be a last thought from my end.
Wow. So we wish you all the best with the thought of consistency and discipline on whatever you have made as your resolution. Thank you so much to be on this, conversation talk that we did.
Thank you so much, Sachi. I think, I don't know whether the answers are right or wrong, but, the true skill of the host is always in asking the right questions. So thank you for having asked me all the right questions, and thank you for having me on your podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.